to Cracklin' Rosie True Crime. Today we will listen to the audio tape of ADA Leifer and Mr. Barlow, who was a witness at the Voskerichian shooting. Before we begin Mr. Barlow's interview, I just want to make available some references for you that will support his witness testimony. If you look on Aiello's 110-page document that just became available, pages 91 and 92, Berkowitz shares details that match up what Mr. Barlow said. In addition to that, if you check out page 85 in the George Carpozzi Jr. book that I had highlighted in the military video, there's also detail there about Mr. Barlow and his testimony. You will hear that Mr. Barlow was adamant about Berkowitz and Berkowitz alone being the shooter. He'll state that there was no one else around at the time of the shooting, and it probably was already starting to get dark, maybe dusk, so there was a little bit of discrepancy with regards to the clothes, but very telling about the hat that he describes. But that's all I'm going to share. Let's listen together.
Called me about Berkowitz.
Basically, it's the same thing that we started to discuss when I spoke to you earlier. Mr. Barlow, mainly what I'm interested in is the incident involving the Voskerichian girl.
Sure.
And that, as you recall, was on March 8, 1977.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you could tell me, starting from about that time. Now, the incident occurred, we believe, at approximately 7:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
And if you could tell me at approximately that time where you were coming from and what occurred, just as best as you can recall.
Yeah, to be more precise, it was about 7:40, and I had just come back from Atlantic City on business, and I was reparking my car after a bite to eat, and I came back, and the background in that area is lighted. That is, the light is reflected off a building wall, and I saw a person standing there with his, let us say, his right arm at shoulder level, apparently as if he was holding somebody, you know, a necker or something like that, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. Simultaneously, and this was 80 steps times 3 feet, 240 feet away. I paced it off afterwards. I heard what I thought was firecrackers. No, having been in Chinatown 2 days before that, on a Sunday during the Chinese New Year's, didn't excite me, you see, because I'd heard a lot of firecrackers. Later on, Berkowitz told the detective that he fired through a plastic bag, and that muffled the sound of the shot. Hence the firecracker sound. It was dimly lit. Of course, the shrubbery at that time was high along all of the sidewalks in Forest Hills, and the lights were dimmer than they are now. But I observed him running toward me at a high rate of speed, and he passed.
I won't be interrupting much during the playing of this, but did you hear that? He witnessed Virginia in his arms, so it sounds possible that Berkowitz could have grabbed her because he witnessed her in the arms first. Then he heard the shooting, and they mentioned the plastic bag. Let's continue.
Within inches of me, but first, when he first saw me, I saw him coming, but he didn't see me for some reason. He wasn't looking for me. He stopped about 3 feet from me and said, "Jesus," just like that. And then, with a resolve and determination to get free, he zoomed past me, between the building wall of the apartment house and me on the sidewalk. I could have tripped him, but hell, you don't trip joggers in our neighborhood. Everybody jogs.
What street was that on?
It was on Dartmouth Street.
That was on Dartmouth.
Yep, Dartmouth and Tennis Place is where he passed me, and that was exactly 240 feet from where I found the girl. I was puzzled by the fact that he was running with both hands on the top of his head, and he was wearing a stocking cap, of all things. And he passed me right under the street lamp on that corner. Now that's weird, because in that day, nobody wore a stocking cap, and nobody runs with his two hands on the top of his head. He confirmed to the detective later that was what he was doing, too. And I walked then toward the front of the building in which I reside, and I saw further on what appeared to be somebody had dumped some garbage on the sidewalk, which is peculiar in Forest Hills, and I went down hoping it was not some girl's feet, and sure enough it was. And he had dropped her in the bushes, and I left her there and went in and dialed the 999 number or 919, whatever it is, and that's when I informed the police that there was of the incident, and so that's the story. And it was this guy Berkowitz, and everything that I said, he confirmed to Detective Flanagan, I think it was.
Now, when you first saw him, you said you saw someone look like he had his arm out?
Well, he was in the crook of his elbow. He was holding her head, and he fired the pistol in her mouth. Mm-hmm. And then he dropped her in the bushes. Of course, this I did not know. All I know is I saw a guy there holding a girl, or holding some object. It was dark. I couldn't tell particularly that it was a girl. Didn't pay particular attention. Mm-hmm. And but when he started running toward me, I got a little curious, but I was tempted to trip him, and maybe I should have, but I didn't.
Now, did you at any time see anything in his hand?
No, he was holding both hands on the top of his head.
Now, when you say a stocking cap, you mean one that looks like a long stocking, or a watch cap?
It was a watch cap.
Watch cap.
As a matter of fact, I described it as a watch cap. Very few people know what that means. You must have been in the Navy.
Well, I've seen them a lot.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Aside from the cap, do you recall how he was dressed?
Yeah, he didn't have a jacket on, as I recall it. I believe a white shirt and pants. It was nothing distinguishing him, nothing outstanding that would call your attention. My focus was on the features of his face and why he was holding his hands on top of his head. But he was the guy. Berkowitz was the guy that ran past me, because that's the guy I described to the police photographer. Mm-hmm. And that's the picture that appeared, the picture of Berkowitz appeared in an earlier newspaper that nobody showed me the picture. And when I finally saw it on August 10th, mm-hmm. that was several months after the Forest Hills murder, I immediately wrote to Inspector Dowd and told him, sort of criticized him for no one ever having showed me the photograph, because that more nearly depicted Berkowitz than the rendition that the police artist did of the guy I described.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, do you recall what kind of covering he had on his feet? Were they shoes or sneakers or...
shoes.
He had shoes on.
Yeah.
Do you remember did you notice whether they were of the work boot type or regular low-cut shoes?
Well, I would imagine low-cut. Bear in mind, at 7:40, you see, it was dark, and he passed me under the light, and he was running from the dark I only saw him as he approached me in the light, that is to say, to be able to distinguish that. But in my judgment, my recollection, he was wearing the ordinary business clothes, let us say. He was not wearing sport clothes or working clothes or anything of that nature.
When you say a white shirt, you mean like a dress shirt with no tie?
Yeah.
That type with the sleeves rolled up or down, if you recall?
That I would not recall.
And the pants, were they denim type or a dungaree type?
You couldn't tell. They were not denim nor dungaree type. They were a a business suit, however old it may have been, and whatever it was used for, at least it was not the denim, the dungarees.
Now, at the point that you saw him, he was still on Dartmouth, and just approaching the first intersection.
Yeah, and he ran like hell.
And now, how long would you say you had him on his face under observation? In other words, how long?
Oh, for a matter of seconds, from a matter of 10 feet away until he passed me.
Mm-hmm.
But he was running fast, and he was scared, and believe me, and the newspapers all said he walked away from his murders, and I'm the only guy who said he was running scared as hell, and he admitted he was scared. He ran like hell, and he told that to the detectives.
And the only words you heard out of his mouth were, Jesus.
Yeah. And he saw me, and he knew he had a problem. That was what he was saying, Jesus.
Was there anyone else on the street that you observed?
Not a soul.
Not a soul.
And I couldn't even, the cops didn't come for 45 minutes, so I throw that one in as an implied criticism, yeah.
Just a quick note, when you look through that 110-page document from Aiello, Berkowitz said that when he passed him, he said, "Hi, mister, but I believe Mr. Barlow more than I do Burke." But just a note.
And let's see, there's been a shooting just around the corner.
Yeah, just a few blocks.
Let's see, what was it? The next shooting was Lupo, was just a couple of days. I'm looking for my dates on it. I don't have it in front of me.
You mean the one in Station Square?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was only a few hundred yards away.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, in Station Square.
All right. That was the Freund case. Now, let me ask you, now, you said you had him under observation for about 10 seconds, and the police arrived about 45 minutes later.
Yeah.
At that point, you gave a description, I assume, of the person that you saw running.
Yep.
And at what point in time did they send someone down, an artist, to do a sketch of?
Well, I went down that night with Detective Flanagan, and also there was a girl ahead of me who lives in the neighborhood who described a guy that she saw, but she saw him 2 or 3 blocks away. I don't know why, unless, I mean, I've heard all sorts of, stories about the Manson-type arrangement, but however, the guy I saw was Berkowitz. The guy she saw, I don't know who it was.
How much of his head was covered by that hat?
How much what?
Of his head was covered by the hat.
Well, I tell you, if you look at, do you have the police photograph by any chance?
I don't have the one with the hat on.
Well, let me take a look. I got a Xerox print of it here. That was the only thing I could get the artist to put on right. It was at about in the front. It was at about the hairline and sloping further down the back of his head, but it did not cover the ears. It was just touched the top of his ears, so it was on a slant, if you get what I mean.
Now, so then some of his hair was sticking out.
No, not really, only from the rear. I could have, if I could have seen the back of his head, I would have seen what was below the cap, but the cap covered the hair in front and pretty well on the sides, except perhaps for the sideburns. And the sideburns were apparent, and they show up also in his picture.
I love that Mr. Barlow was really proactive about calling out the police with the sketch and stayed on top of it. A lot of times in these situations, people want to stay out of it, but he was very proactive, so really appreciate that.
Would it be possible for you to send me a photocopy of the composite that you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't have access to the composites. They have the witness having to send them copies. It was NYPD holding out on information.
Address, if you have a pencil there.
Yeah, just have a second.
Okay.
Shoot.
My name is Herbert J. Leifer, Leifer.
Herbert J. like James,
Right.
Leifer.
Right. And it's the Queens District Attorney's Office, 125-01,
125-01,
Queens Boulevard,
Queens Boulevard. good.
Kew Gardens.
Kew Gardens.
11415.
11415. Yeah. Now, the only thing is, if I send it in the mail, you won't get it for a week. You want me to drop it off tonight when I get home?
No,
Is there any way I can drop that off?
No, the chances are of us catching each other so that I can receive it personally are slim. I'm sure if you drop it in the mail, I'll get it before the end of the week.
Yeah, well,
put it together with
what I'll do then is I'll go home and I may drop it in the Kew Gardens post office. That'll help save routing back and forth, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen David Berkowitz in person?
No, I never have.
The only time was...
That one time.
Yeah, of course. Well, I understand that. That was the only time that you've seen him in person. Yep. Other than that, you've only seen him on television or pictures in the newspapers.
Well, no, I only saw the pictures in the newspaper. I'm working 60 hours a week. I don't get much chance to watch television.
Okay. What type of work do you do, sir?
I'm with an engineering firm.
I see.
Down here in New York.
I see. So that the only time was then in photographs in the newspapers.
Yeah, but it's a dead ringer for there. There are certain poses that came out in the newspaper were a dead ringer for him as he raced past me, and I recognized it right away. As a matter of fact, my description was a perfect description of the guy that of Berkowitz, and I missed it the age by about 3 years. But it's hard to tell when a guy's running with a... You know, when you put a tie on, it makes you look older. When you take the tie off, it makes you look younger. He didn't have a necktie on, and in the dim light, he looked about 19, 20, 21, and I understand he was about 24.
Right. Now, what was the weather like? Was it warm or cold? Or I mean, March in...
It was not cold.
Because early March is hard to tell in New York.
Well, it was clear and dry, and it was not cold. I probably had a top coat on, but I may not have even had it buttoned up.
Did it seem unusual when he went by you to see a guy running in his shirt sleeves?
No, not in that neighborhood, because there's an awful lot of people jog, maybe not at nighttime, but you don't necessarily question what they're doing or why they're doing it. That's a kind of a main thoroughfare, that Dartmouth Street.
I don't recall what you said. Were his sleeves up or down? Do you remember?
I wouldn't remember that one. But I'm pretty sure they were down. But I wouldn't be able to swear on that one. Again, my focus was on the curiosity of why a guy would be running with his hands on his head wearing a stocking cap, except to hold the stocking cap on, but also, of course, he could have been holding the pistol up there.
Yeah. Of course, we never know what, you never know what people are doing when they do it.
But if you could get Flanagan talked with him, and he told Flanagan the same story when he described me, and the point where he passed me, and he said, yes, I was wearing a stocking cap, and it was the first time, and the only time I ever wore a stocking cap. But Flanagan, I don't think, asked him why he was running with his hands on his head. That was the thing that was the curious thing, unless he was holding that pistol up there.
Let me ask you this. Now, Dartmouth Street, at the point where the girl was shot and at the point where you saw him, is a one-way street, right?
Yeah.
And that's a one-way, I don't remember my directions now. That's one way going toward the city.
Yes.
Okay. Did you glance after the runner?
Yeah, which way he was going?
Yep.
He was going like hell straight down to Dartmouth Street.
In other words, he crossed over the street.
No, he was running, well, he crossed over Tennis Place.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And he
But he
continued
continued on Dartmouth Street, and he told Flanagan the reason he was going down there is, hell, he had his car parked on Burns Street 2 blocks away, meaning he had to go 2 blocks down Dartmouth Street and swing around and pick up his car on Burns Street.
You have to go right.
Yeah, he had to make a right turn, but he had to go around the stadium first.
And that's where he shot the Freund girl on Burns.
Well, it was really Station Square.
It's Burns right off Continental.
Yeah, whereas his car was closer to 68th Street on Burns.
Now, did you happen to notice when he was running whether any cars were pulling out or
Not
any
a,
lights on
there
the
wasn't a soul, there wasn't an automobile, there wasn't anything.
Nothing moved, no movement
Nothing,
of
no
any kind.
movement. I know other people have tried to convince me that there were people who were dashing here and there. No, there were not.
And you didn't hear anyone yelling?
Other people trying to convince him of something.
This way or anything
No,
like
sir.
or any horns
Not
blowing?
a sound. There wasn't anybody. The first thing that happened was when I was opened the bushes to see, that confirmed that it was somebody lying there, I turned around and here was a dark, slender woman, about 4 feet 8, standing there trembling. She had come around the corner, and I understood later she didn't speak English, and I told her not to disturb the body. I was going to phone the police. And when I came back out, there was a young man had come along and pulled her out. For God's sakes, the one thing you don't do with a person is pull them out of the bushes. But however, he did. She was dead, so it didn't matter. But that was after the fact. It took me 45 seconds to get the 919 number, and of course I had to go back into my apartment and phone and then come out, and that's when the boy had just arrived. So that they were the only people, and then up to that point.
And then the police arrived about 45 minutes later.
Yeah, meanwhile there were 1,000 people there, including her parents and brother and sister, and they were wailing around, of course. It was rather pitiful.
It's
45 minutes for the police to arrive. Her family was there with her dead body. And I forgot to mention before, but here, let me move this way. I love that picture of Virginia. She was so beautiful, so senseless. All right, let's listen to the rest. There's just a little bit more.
it's a very difficult and sad kind of a thing.
Oh, of course it was, and there was just no reason for it, but some stupid jerk like Berkowitz pulling something like that.
Also, one other question. Did you happen to see any Volkswagens around that evening, any yellow Volkswagens, in going from your car to the area?
No, because when I came home, I went in and had a bite to eat, and then I went out and unloaded my car with all the office records and things, and then I went out and reparked it. And as I walked back, there was no traffic, no people, no traffic.
Nothing at all?
No. It's a quiet neighborhood.
I know I've been there many, many times,
Yeah.
and I'm just...
Well, I mean, it was quiet that night.
As I had mentioned to you when I spoke to you on Friday, what we're trying to do is piece together again for the last time, all of the information from all of the witnesses, from all of the victims, and try to put it together to see whether there's any similarity.
Yeah, well, you may find something, and more power to you if you do. I'm not counting anything out. All I'm saying is that the guy that did the job in the case that I was a witness of, that was Berkowitz, and there was nobody else.
Okay,
That doesn't mean there weren't somebody else in some of the others.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. I really appreciate it.
Well, if I can help you at any time, let me know, because I have an interest in that thing.
I
And,
understand.
yeah, and I want to be helpful. At the same time, I don't want to give you a whole bunch of BS and just confuse you, and that wouldn't help at all.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'll send you some of the pictures that I have.
Thank you very much, and have a very happy holiday.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, told you I didn't have to interrupt at all. Very powerful testimony, huh? Good witness in my personal opinion. He was adamant about what he saw, and no one was going to change his mind. And of course, as you heard in the undertones, there were people trying to feed him information somewhere, and he wasn't having it. It was Berkowitz, according to Mr. Barlow. So anyway, guys, I have so many documents to look over. I hope that you enjoyed this time with me, even though it's a very macabre situation, but I hope that you enjoyed listening with me. I hope that you've been active in the chat. Of course, this is a premiere, so I'm in there with you right now. And I hope that we had some good dialogue. Thank you again so much for visiting with me. And until the next one, have an awesome night.